In 2012, Dylan Redwine, a 13-year-old boy, was forced to spend Thanksgiving with his father. He went missing. He was murdered. Would his killer ever be caught? Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel where we talk about real crimes and real people. This is the murder of Dylan Redwine. Do you want to know what happened? Let's get started. In November 2012, Dylan Redwine had to visit his father Mark. Mark Allen Redwine was born on August 24, 1961. He lived in La Plata County. He was a truck driver. He was divorced 2 times. His ex-wife Elaine Hall was Dylan's mother, and they also had another son together, Corey. Mark and Elaine were going through a difficult divorce and a custody battle over Dylan. That year, Dylan didn't want to visit his father. He told his brother Corey he was upset and uncomfortable around Mark. A year before, the two of them found details about Mark that would damage their relationship forever. Elaine, that year, was also worried about Dylan visiting Mark, but her lawyer told her she could face prosecution if Dylan didn't fly out and spend Thanksgiving with Mark. In November 18, 2012, Mark picked up Dylan at the Durango La Plata County Airport. They went to Walmart and McDonald's, but they hardly interacted with each other. Upon his arrival, Dylan wanted to spend the night at his friend's house, but Mark said no. Dylan texted his friend, arranging to meet at 6:30 a.m. the next morning. However, the next morning came. Dylan's friend texted him shortly after 6:30, but there was no response. Dylan Redwine was in fact missing. Dylan's phone and iPad were last used in November 19th at 9:30, and his backpack and devices were never found. According to Mark, Dylan was asleep when he woke up. Mark went to run some errands in town, and when he returned, Dylan wasn't there. There was a bowl of cereal on the table, and the TV was turned to Nickelodeon. Mark stated Dylan had left all by himself. However, Dylan's mother, Elaine, didn't believe Mark was telling the truth. She stated if Dylan had left, he would have called her. When Elaine learned Dylan was missing, she drove 6 hours to La Plata County in southwestern Colorado to help the search. They searched the mountains. Community members and law enforcement searched for months. Everyone was doing everything to find Dylan. Mark Redwine, however, behaved questionably. Instead of searching for Dylan, Mark, on the first night Dylan was missing, at 11 p.m., his house was completely dark. He went to sleep. The case gained worldwide attention. The police received many tips, including from psychics. In June 2013, partial remains were found on Middle Mountain Road near Mark's house. The remains had no head. Those remains belonged to Dylan Redwine. During investigations, one of Mark's ex-wives told investigators of a conversation she had with Mark. He told her during divorce and custody proceedings he would kill the kids before he let her have them. He also stated if he wanted to dump a body, he would leave it out in the mountains. A witness saw Mark driving in the area of where they found the human remains in April 2013. Mark left town and didn't return in June 2013 to search for Dylan. After Dylan's remains were found, Mark had a conversation with one of his sons where he talked about how the rest of Dylan's body, including his skull, would have to be found before authorities could determine if blunt force trauma was the cause of death. In August 2013, the police searched Mark's house several times. They found traces of Dylan's blood in the living room. Cadaver dogs detected human cadaver scent in the living room, presence of human remains in the living room, washing machine, and on the clothes Mark was wearing on November 18, 2012. In February 2014, a search in Mark's car with dogs resulted in finding the presence of cadaver scent in Mark's pickup truck. That same year, Mark and Elaine went to Dr. Phil, and they accused each other. Elaine believed Mark had done something to Dylan. Mark refused to take the polygraph. By now, it became apparent Mark was involved in Dylan's death. In November 2015, Dylan's skull was found. Authorities believed Mark had killed Dylan in a fit of rage. The case was circumstantial, but prosecutors decided to convene a grand jury, and in July 2017, the grand jury indicted Mark Redwine, and he was charged with second-degree murder and child abuse. Mark Redwine was arrested in Bellingham, Washington. Mark's trial was delayed several times, COVID-19 being one of the main reasons. After 9 years of investigations and since Dylan's death, Mark Redwine's trial began in 2021. The prosecution stated Dylan was killed in the living room. Mark then cleaned the crime scene. He hid Dylan's body and then he beheaded Dylan. The motive would be Dylan had confronted Mark with compromising photos which had led to deterioration of their relationship. Evidence showed text messages by Dylan to friends and family stating he didn't want to spend Thanksgiving with his father. Forensic anthropologists testified, stating Dylan had suffered a fracture above his left eye. There were 2 marks on his skull, which suggested they were done by a knife or a sharp object near the time of death. Wildlife experts stated animals from that area wouldn't transport a skull far from the rest of the remains. Dylan's brother, Corey, also testified. He stated that in 2011, while on a road trip and while Mark was sleeping, Dylan and Corey found photos on Mark's computer. The photos showed Mark in a dress, wearing a wig, wearing women's lingerie, and eating what looked like feces on a diaper. Both boys were disgusted. Corey saved the photos on his phone for leverage. After that, Dylan and Mark's relationship was destroyed. Before Dylan traveled to La Plata, Mark was aware Corey had seen the photos. During a text argument, Corey told his father he knew about the photos, and then he antagonized Mark by texting, "Hey beautiful, you are what you eat. Look in the mirror." In August 2012, Corey sent Mark the photos while he was on a road trip with Dylan alone, but nothing happened that time. However, in November 2012, while Dylan was visiting Mark made some comments about his mother and Corey being a bad influence on Dylan. Dylan was upset. So Dylan asked Corey for the photos to confront Mark about them. Corey sent the photos, and it is believed that after Dylan confronted Mark with the photos, Mark went into a fit of rage and he killed Dylan. The defense's version of the events was that on the morning of November 19, 2012, Dylan was alive and he went missing. They stated someone might have taken Dylan while he was out walking, or he was attacked by wildlife, and that the photos he had found had nothing to do with Dylan's death. The defense stated Elaine appearing on national TV turned public opinion against Mark and influenced the investigation. The defense stated the marks on Dylan's skull could have been made by a mountain lion. They believe between 2012 and 2015 the remains had been subject to environmental factors like animal scavenging. The defense accused the investigation of being biased and sloppy. The blood found in the living room was somewhat small that it was likely to be found at anyone's home. They stated it was from when Dylan had cut his finger a year before, and using that drop was just junk science. In July 2022, Mark Redwine was found guilty of second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death. He was facing 12 to 48 years in prison. While the verdict was read, Mark showed no reaction to it. Prosecutors asked for the full sentence, stating several aggravating circumstances. Mark killed his own son, he misled law enforcement, and he showed no remorse. October 2022, Mark Redwine, at the age of 60, was sentenced to 48 years in prison. Dylan Redwine was just 13 years old.